So again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is a very important night. We certainly focus on sharing information with you on our 10th and 11th grade scholars. Tonight, I have Ms. Perello who's joining me, as well as we have a colleague from Manhattan University, Ms. Latif, and you'll hear from her before the evening is over. There's a lot of time and effort that went through put together this presentation. Again, for those who are just walking in, on the left side of the folder, you have a copy of our presentation, as well as questions that we think students should ask when visiting a college fair. So please take a look at that. And on the right side, the left side, you have our high school profile, and we'll talk a little bit more about our high school profile as we continue the presentation, as well as our brochure. So again, as a high school, we have two school counselors. You have Ms. Perello, and then you have Mr. Treglia. Just want to address this because the parent brought it up. Why isn't, one counselor here? We have many evening events, and try not to stretch my school counselors out too thin. So we share in our work that we do. So Mr. Treglia was here for our 8th, 9th grade parent informational, and Ms. Perello is here for our 10th and 11th grade presentation. So as you know, we have a number of supports, leadership team comprised of myself, Mr. DeBellis, Mr. Calasuno, and of course, Mr. Treglia and Ms. Perello and Ms. Nicolettos. As you start to move on into the senior year, you're going to find Ms. Nicolettos being much more helpful with this sharing out of information, things that you may need. She is probably the anchor to our guidance department. Here's a quote that's very meaningful to me personally, and is one that we try to get our students to embrace. It's a quote that we have in our 6th grade hallway, our middle school hallway, and we try to get students to really reflect on this quote as often as possible. Do something for yourself today that your future self would thank you for. And the reason why it's so meaningful for me, because the decisions that we make today will determine our future earning potential, determine what college and universities we attend, right? If we earn merit scholarship, if we earn just a number of things based on the decisions that we make now. So we've started this process off by revising our presentation to parents and students starting from the middle school, because we want students to get this message very early. So when we had our 8th and 9th grade presentation, we actually had Ms. Latif from Manhattan University address our 8th grade families, because we want students to start thinking about the decisions that they're making now that will determine their future. So here are two students who really took advantage of this quote. We have our valedictorian, salutatorian, we have Jackson Snyder, and we have Renee Arana. Both of these students, again, were quite exceptional. They really immersed themselves into all of our offerings, not just academically, but getting themselves involved in a variety of different events, clubs, sporting, really being well-rounded. Renee is at Binks University in a scholars program, and where she received some good financial support. Jackson had a number of opportunities, but he decided to go to Indiana University to the Kelley School of Business. Again, two scholars doing extremely well, and one of you, or a couple of you, will be also featured when it's your time to reach this milestone. So again, we're very proud of the accomplishments that they've made and what they continue to do, and we're hoping that they will be back here when we have our college roundtable. But again, these are two students that really took advantage of all that we offer, and again, this quote really exemplified the work that they did. So with that said, I'm going to bring Ms. Perello up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We are going to start talking about the college process and what we can be doing in 10th and 11th grade to begin that process and enhance basically your whole profile. So to start, we have our guidance webpage. If you go to the Tuckahoe High School webpage and scroll down to quick links, you can access it there. There are links to pretty much every website we're going to talk about and all the websites that the students will need. We have a copy of our school profile, which Mr. Arthur just talked about on there. We have all of the courses we offer as well. So please take a look and visit it. We work really hard on updating it. And any links to any registration you might need as well, like the SAT or ACT is here. I'm just going to briefly touch on what we are going to do sophomore year and junior year. Sophomore year is what we consider a career exploration year. We will go into the 10th grade classrooms and introduce students to a program called Pathful Explore. I'll go over that further. Every year we have the club fair where students can get involved. 10th grade is a really important year to do so, to start building that resume. Recently, last year and this year, we are doing some college tours for our 10th grader, which has been a wonderful experience. These pictures are actually from this year. On the bottom right, we went to Fordham University. On the bottom left, we were at our Pelham, Eastchester, Tuckahoe College Fair, and last year we went to the Kelly Center for Health Sciences, which is a really wonderful opportunity for our students to explore different schools, see what they like and don't like, even if they're not applying to that particular school. It opens their eyes just to see what they may or may not be interested in. Junior year is what people consider probably the most important year in high school. It is the last year that students can really build on their GPA. We have individual meetings junior year where we're going to start talking about the college process and discuss specific schools that a student might be interested in. We start with our College Cafe program there. In College Cafe, for our juniors, we work on resume building, the beginnings of the college essay, and what students can be doing kind of ahead of time for the college process. Again, we added some new things, the college fair. This past summer, Mr. Treglia ran the summer college workshop along with 4 different representatives from different colleges. Students learned about the college essay and the common application, so it was a great jumpstart to senior year. We also did other college tours. We went to Binghamton University, Fordham, and then our students just went to the Boston schools. So that was Boston University, Boston College, and Northeastern, which was a really wonderful experience. I'll let Mr. Arthur talk about this new Iceland trip.
So before we get to Iceland, I just want to back up for a minute. So if you're a parent of a 10th grader, again, our expectation is that every student in our school is being prepared to go to college. Right? Now, a student may choose to go a different pathway, maybe go to the military. Certainly, there's a lot of respect for those who serve and protect our country. Some students may decide they want to work. But the way we're preparing students to make sure they have all the skills needed so they have a choice to decide if they want to go to college or if they want to pursue something else. Just a couple of things that are just not on here, but important for you to know. So one of the things that most high schools do, they set the level of their rigor to Regents exams. Now, more advanced high schools, schools that maybe have an IB program, or schools that just, from Brownsville to Eastchester, one of the things that we try to do is set the level of our rigor to the AP standards. So one of the things that we've done last year, is that we had our high school English teachers work on the AP curriculum, looking at skills that are required for all students to do well on the AP assessment. We took those skills and we pushed those skills down to our middle school. So starting from the middle school to our high school classes, English in particular, we're working on an AP standard. Now, why is that important? You may have heard that some of your children may be talking about a new vocabulary initiative that we've launched called Wordly Wise. So if you have a child in the middle school or in high school, that's a program that we're using now. It's a pilot. Wordly Wise was specifically created to prepare students for the ACT and SAT courses. Now, why is that important? When you look at some of the initiatives that we're putting into place, and you see a lot of new, we're doing this to make sure all students have the opportunity to excel. So starting from the 10th grade, we start our college tours, right? So as Ms. Perello said, our 10th graders had an opportunity to visit several schools. Some students took advantage of it, some did not. If you're in the 11th grade, some of you sitting here went with me to Boston and Mr. Treglia. So we took 50 students to Boston, a phenomenal experience. And it's very different from walking a college campus versus, looking at a tour, a virtual tour. Being able to interface with students, being able to ask questions, hearing very important information that the college representatives who may be reading your essay share. I'll give you one quick example. On the trip, what students learned was, like a school like Boston College, they do not measure demonstrated interest, where other schools do. What is demonstrated interest? So when you go onto a college website or you send information, they keep a record of every time you visit, right? Most colleges do that, some don't. Boston College is one of them that don't, okay? Just continuing to some of the initiatives, as Ms. Perella said, starting in students' 11th grade year, right? We take them to, again, we started with the Boston trip. It was 10th and 11th graders. We also have on March 17th, we have a trip scheduled for students to go to Binghamton University. Binghamton University trip is free for students. They just need to show up, sign, and they can go and experience that. We're also talking about next year, for those who are seniors, looking at visiting schools in the Philadelphia area. So our commitment is to give our students as much exposure as possible. Let me continue to say this. We don't expect every student to pursue a top-tier college or an Ivy League college. So what we're doing is we're also working with local universities. And you hear a little bit about Manhattan University, which has a strong engineering program. We're also working with Westchester Community College because some students want to start at a 2-year school. We had 9 students, seniors, last week. We brought the rep in, and all 9 students completed the application and got accepted on the spot. Now we're working to have all 9 students actually visit Westchester Community College. We have plans to send students to visit Manhattan University. So we're trying to get our students out and meet them where they are, but expose them and just try to sometimes just whet their appetite. Let them see what's available. So that's very important to us. So there has been a very strong focus on preparing students for college. In that note, this year we had 5 colleges come in and provided our seniors with 30 minutes where they reviewed their essays and provide them with on-the-spot feedback. That's invaluable. That is an invaluable investment that we made. And it was free. All students had to do was show up. And these are the admissions reps who are reading college essays, making decisions. And Ms. Latif, she's one of them, okay? Again, you heard that this summer, we had a college workshop for students transitioning from the 11th to the 12th grade year. We had about 20 families that took advantage of it. And we know that summer schedules can be busy. But again, another free workshop, invaluable, where they heard from college representatives on key topics, such as establishing a professional network, such as financial aid, such as the Common App, writing your college essay. So these are things, initiatives that we are trying to expose our scholars to as often as possible to make sure they can have the best opportunity to be successful. With that note, I'm thankful to the Board of Education, Dr. Goodman, for allowing us to schedule a trip to Iceland. So if you're sitting here in the 10th grade or in the 11th grade, next year in the spring, we're taking right now 32 students to Iceland, and these are students who have taken either chemistry, earth science, biology, physics, and we have an 8-day trip that we're going to be visiting Iceland. I've taken students to Iceland before, and it was a wonderful experience that really made the classroom come alive. So we're trying to do educational trips also. So again, we're just trying to make sure we're competing. I don't care if it's Brownsville, Eastchester, but we're competing in every way we can.
All right, and our senior year, our main focus, especially when students get right back to school, is having the individual college meetings and really working on the application process. So actually, as of today, there's about, I think, 78% of our seniors who are done applying to colleges. So many of them have applied to early action. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But a lot of the process, it's pretty heavy in the beginning of the year, but then students can kind of relax a little bit more their senior year. College Cafe is also offered currently, and that is an opportunity for students at lunch to eat and have a drink and a snack and to relax and work on their college applications. And myself and Mr. Treglia are there sitting with them and helping and reviewing their common applications or reviewing an essay or supplement that they're working on. So it's a wonderful opportunity. So for College Cafe, we spend the fall working with our seniors and the spring working with our juniors. Pathful Explore is the program I just touched on for our 10th grade students. It offers our students different career interest inventories. Students fill out different yes or no questions or different inventories that will tell them what cluster that of careers that they may or may not be interested in. It also connects students to different videos of a day in the life of somebody in that specific career. It will tell a student what education they need to become that career, how much money they would make in that career. So it's really a wonderful resource. It also offers different internship and job searches on it as well. So we will go into the 10th grade classrooms, and every 10th grader will have a username and password. If they want to get to it before we get to the classroom, you can go to our guidance website, and it will tell you your username or password to log in ahead of time. The transcript. So the transcript is probably the most important piece of the college application process. On the screen above is a sample transcript. What is on a transcript? So there's different boxes. Each box represents a different grade level, and it will have students, every course that they've taken, the final year-end grade that they've received, and the credit that they have earned as well. So colleges will not see every quarter grade, they will just see the year-end grade. If you look at the bottom, that we have a GPA, that's a grade point average. There's two different ones. There's one out of a 4.0, and there is also a weighted average, which is out of 100. At Tuckahoe, our GPAs are weighted. What does that mean? If a student takes an AP course, that final grade is multiplied by 1.1 when it's calculated into the GPA. So, for example, if a student receives a 90 in AP Bio, it will go into their GPA as a 99. If a student takes an honors class at Tuckahoe, that final grade is multiplied by 1.05, so a little bit less than an AP, but also helps to enhance that GPA or at the bottom. So you will see the 90 on the transcript, but when it gets calculated into the GPA, it will help to boost it. So, of course, the goal is to have as high of a GPA as possible. So we want our students at Tuckahoe to push themselves, but as counselors and parents and students, we're always debating how much do we want to push the student so that they can really learn and push themselves, but just not too much that their GPA will drop. Right? So there's this balance that we're trying to find every single year. So we offer, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but we offer a bunch of different higher level courses, AP courses, honors courses. Usually the rule of thumb is if you can maintain in the 80s or higher in an AP course, then we would say it would be a benefit to your transcript. If not, it might start to bring down your GPA. Also, after talking to some representatives, colleges want to see an upwards trend. So it's okay if your student didn't start off strong in 9th grade, but then they really decided, oh, hey, I get it, I want to do better, and then they push themselves in 10th and 11th and 12th grade. One important note is that the GPA that colleges will see is the GPA that's only comprised of 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. So that means that even if a student does really well their senior year, their GPA is not going to change until the very end of the year, and at that point the student is already in the college that they're going to attend. So really, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade is the time where students really need to buckle down academically to form this GPA. As you can see in the sample transcript, our students also sometimes take, in 8th grade, a few courses that do count as high school credit. For example, usually Spanish 1 or Italian 1, and if a student took algebra in 8th grade, or science or bio in 8th grade, that will also be on the transcript, and that will also be in the GPA as well. Just another note to make this year especially, we've noticed that a majority of the colleges want to see 3 years of a Regents level math and science. So what does that mean? Potentially algebra, geometry, algebra 2, or instead for science, that would mean bio, chemistry, earth science. We have a whole different variety, and APs count in this as well. So also typically schools do want at least 2 years of a language other than English, so like 2 years of Spanish or 2 years of Italian. That doesn't mean we stop there. We always encourage students to continue on if it's something that they enjoy and that they're doing well in. Every college has different academic expectations, and some schools do require this, others don't, but we thought that we'd make you aware of it. So that is the transcript. Again, I think it is probably the biggest piece that colleges are looking at in this college application process. I will turn this over to Mr. Arthur. No.
We don't post Regents exams on our transcripts. Some schools do, we don't, and we recognize that only in New York State we take Regents, and right now the Board of Regents and the Commission of Education are reviewing that. Regents may become a thing of the past, but for this year we know Regents are still part of the assessment requirements for students. Just want to go back here for a second. You know, Ms. Perello just really outlined the essentials of a transcript. They are very important. And I will share this. You know, I'm a parent of 4 children. I have 2 in college right now. And what I would say to you is your 10th and 11th grade year really matters. Certainly 9th grade does. But what you do now would really have a significant impact on how colleges view you. And I know that as a parent, and I know it as a principal. My middle daughter attends University of Miami. And as a parent, I didn't push my children to take AP classes, but I explained to them the benefit of taking advanced placement classes and how colleges look at that. You're going to hear from Ms. Lateef, you know, and she would share with you something slightly little different that was said before, that a college would want to see that you challenge yourself in an AP course, even if you were to get a C, instead of not challenging yourself, because the level of rigor that you experience with an AP course is a college level, as opposed to taking an honors or taking a Regents course. Those are not college level courses. So just to be clear. So my daughter's at University of Miami. You know, again, she took about 6 or 7 AP courses, right? And she did well, and she had a number of options. I did encourage her to consider certain courses based on what she wanted to pursue, but she didn't listen to her daddy, right? So some of the schools that she wanted to attend, such as Georgetown, great school, but they were looking for particular courses on her transcript for the major she wanted to pursue, and she was waitlisted. And what happened to her? They closed the class, right? They were not accepting any more students, and she did not get accepted, okay? So when we talk to students, we explain to them the importance of, you don't have to know what major you're going to pursue. My youngest daughter, who's at George Washington University, you know, she was a liberal arts. She didn't know what she wanted to pursue. However, she did challenge herself and took, you know, I think about 7 AP courses herself, and she got accepted. Now, you may say, well, 7 is a lot, and it could be. But what colleges also look at is how many AP classes are available to students. Colleges do not penalize students because they may have taken 3 AP courses. If your school only has 5, you know, you're only able to take what's offered. So they do not hold that against you. What they do hold against you is if your school has, let's say, 16 AP courses and you may have taken 1. Questions come up. Did this child not challenge themselves? What's this child's story? So these are things that, you know, parents, you need to be aware of, our students need to be aware of, and again, you'll hear it from Ms. Lateef. It's very important to know what we offer. So when we talked about the high school profile that you have in your folder, this year we have 16 AP courses. But in our high school profile, we made sure to note that 4 of them are new. So if a student is a senior now, they didn't have the opportunity to take some of those courses because they weren't available. So that's not held against them. But if you are a sophomore, a junior, you need to avail yourself of some of these courses. Why? Because they're available, and colleges want to see that you've challenged yourself. So that's really important. So segue into this slide. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry, but please follow along in your folder. So what we've did here for you is mapped out all of our AP and honor roll courses by grade. So you see in the 9th grade, students can take English honors, global honors, geometry. AP, they can take environmental as well as AP computer science. So those are courses that are available to 9th graders. As you may know, we created a brand new high school course catalog that you should have received when you met with the school counselors during last year's meeting. We did start it last year. If you did not have one, you will have one this year. That document outlines every single high school course, all the prerequisites, all the requirements, so you can see what the offerings are. In our 10th grade, we have AP World and AP, again, Computer Science. So even if you're a 10th grader, you didn't take it in the 9th grade, you still can take it as a 10th grader. And again, we have English honors, chemistry honors, and algebra 2. So AP World History is a new course. It's new this year. So students are not taking Global 2 or have the opportunity to take AP World History instead of taking Global 2. So why is that important? Again, we did not have this course last year, and we wanted to make sure at each grade level, we're giving students the opportunity to really advance themselves by taking AP courses. As you can see and expected, as students move on to the 11th grade year and 12th grade year, there are additional AP courses that are available. So I'll give you a second just to take a look at that. But it's very important for students to understand it is so important to avail yourself of these courses because depending on what you want to pursue, colleges want to see that you have challenged yourself. So now let me share with you some data. One of the things the parents said to me when I first started last year is you need to make sure you have the right teachers teaching the AP course, just don't have these courses. Well, let me show you some data. So the slide to the left, what it shows you, over the last 5 years, last year's administration, we had the highest passing rate of a 3 or higher. On an AP exam, right, is measured in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Colleges give students the opportunity to earn college credit depending on how they do on the AP exams. So some students who've graduated from here or from other schools, they may have graduated with maybe 16 college credits. Some students, maybe 30. Now, why is that important? As a parent, let's talk about the dollars and cents. So my daughter who's at Miami and one who is at GW picked one of the most expensive schools, right? So we're talking about over $90,000 per year. So if you're a student who's taken 30 college credits here, that's your freshman year already taken care of. You're starting college as a sophomore. You just saved yourself close to $100,000. It matters. It really does matter. So looking at our data again, last year we had the highest passing rate over the past 5 years. When you look at the chart to the right, one of the things I want to point out to you is it shows you from 2020 to 2024 the total number of students who have taken AP exams, the number of exams, AP students with a 3 or higher, and the percentage, here's the key thing, the percentage of total AP students with a 3. So when you take a look at last year, we had 192 exams. Some students may have taken 3 or 4. There were 96 students who actually took AP exams. When you look at the number of students who achieved a 3 or higher, 79. When you take a look at the percentage, 82.29. Now you say, why is that important? Because not only are we offering students additional AP courses, but we're preparing them to earn a 3 or higher. This is important data. This is data that's compared nationally, compared to all students who have taken AP courses across the country. This chart shows last year we had 17 AP scholars. An AP scholar is a student who received a score of 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. We had 17 students. AP scholar with honors, student who received an average of at least a 3.25 on all AP exams taken and scores of 3 or higher on 4 or more AP exams. We had 3. AP scholars with distinction, we had 11. Students who received an average score of at least a 3.5 on all AP exams taken and a score of 3 or higher on 5 or more exams. All right? This is important data. This data should tell you as a parent that the curriculum that we're offering students, which again is a college curriculum, that our students are really being prepared to do well on these exams. We analyze our data every year, looking at where there are gaps, looking where we have to improve our practices, and that's how we develop our professional development for teachers. So with that said, this is one of the reasons why I added an add drop practice. So what happens sometimes with some of our juniors, sophomores, and seniors, they may be in an AP course, and the course may be a bit challenging. So sometimes students would come and say, this course is too challenging, it's going to lower my GPA, I want to drop it. And I'm going to ask Ms. Latif to speak to it. So I know from being a parent and from working with colleges, the last thing a student should do is drop an AP class, as opposed to figure out what they need to do to make sure they can end the class successfully. The school counselors are working with our students to make sure that the course load that they carry is reasonable. We do have some students here that are taking 7 AP courses in 1 year. We do. I've worked as a principal in an IB school, and in that IB school, IB is ranked even higher than AP. And if you're a full IB student, you're carrying a course load of maybe 8 IB courses. Those are all college level courses. Now again, we're not saying all students need to do that. But what we are saying is, right, challenge yourself in the best way possible. Follow the advice of your school counselors who are trained to look at your transcript, to look at your resume, to look at your grades, and to make a recommendation. Some students want to challenge themselves even more, and we'll never say no to a student. But we will caution them to make sure that there's balance in what they're doing. One of the things that's not on the slide that I want to speak to, some parents have said, well, you don't offer a lot of AP courses. It's not about offering a lot, but what we do is there may be a child or a scholar who wants to take, right now we have the 2 levels of calculus. There's calculus AB, calculus BC. So here at Tuckahoe High School, we teach in-person calculus AB. But if a student wants to take calculus BC, we can set them up, they can take that course online, and it still shows up on their transcript as an AP course. So we offer students courses online that we may not physically be able to offer in person, right? So we do extend that to students, and we probably have about 5 or 6 students who take advantage of that. So it's not something that we share out, right? It's a cost to the district, but if a student wants to take a course that we don't offer, we absolutely do support them in that. Now, with that said, if a student is taking a course, they're expected to complete the course. There's some students say it's too much, so we caution students before signing up. There's a commitment. Once you sign up for this course, you have to stick with that. So coming back to the add drop policy, We know that sometimes at the beginning of the school year, things get a little bit hectic. So students have roughly about 20 days to either add or drop a course. Very similar to a college format, right? Once that drop period passes, right, we stop. We don't allow students to drop anymore. And I want to explain to you why. I've gotten some emails from parents that say, Mr. Arthur, in the beginning of the year, my child's biology class only had 17 students, and now they have 29. This is too many students in the course. Well, what parents don't realize in us trying to accommodate the needs of students and parents by allowing students to add and drop, it impacts the size of our courses. So we put this policy in place to try to maintain class size to the best of our ability while still trying to be flexible. So I share that with you because sometimes I've had to say no to a student or no to a parent. Unfortunately, I cannot honor your request. Why? Because that class that they want to go into is going to take that class to 30, or is going to take that class to a number, right, that we cannot support. Or may drop a class, instead of having 10 students, may drop a class to 5. How do we run a class with 4 or 5 students? So all those things we have to factor in when we're creating our master schedule. So I share that with you because it's important information. So this add drop, we are strictly enforcing it, so much so that the school counselor is no longer allowed to remove a student from an AP or honors class unless I sign off on it. All right? Why? Because we want to make sure that our students are really preparing themselves, right, for the challenges that lie ahead. That's Sure. So just to repeat the question, and I'll ask you to touch on that a little bit later when you come up. So the question is, what kind of supports are offered to students who may take an AP course and maybe getting a grade after the first marking period of maybe a 70 or 75, and what are you doing to support them to make sure they get a 3, 4, or 5? Well, let me start by saying that we have open enrollment for AP courses. There are very few high schools that have that structure. Most high schools have a criteria for students to be able to take an AP course. And I've worked as a principal in 2 other high schools, and there were criterias. There's a criteria for honors, but not for AP. And I embrace that, and I'm explaining to you why. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that you cannot always measure a scholar's progress by just looking at data. Because what I've seen from some students, that effort, what I call the it factor, that a child becomes so motivated for certain course, maybe interest-based, and they may not have the grades to meet that class, to gain with that criteria, but they take a class, but they're so motivated and they wind up doing very well. So coming to your question, the school counselors always caution students and guide students about courses that they want to take, okay? AP courses are college-level courses. Students who are taking these courses are expected to meet the requirements of what they're expected to learn in the course. Extra help is offered to students by teachers just the same way all of our courses are. Students have to really dig down and devote that time in the studies to make sure that they can do well in the course. Meeting with the teacher, there's online resources for a number of the AP courses, so they really have to avail themselves of those supports, no differently from being a college student. So these are some of the expectations. So the extra help the teachers offer, the online supports, and the teachers share information with students in terms of things that they can do to really better themselves. But again, it's a college-level course, no differently from what's done in other high schools. I know there was another hand that went up. Yep. Sure. If I understood the question correctly, I think the question was along the lines of what's the patterns or trends or shifts with some of the universities in the way they are looking or receiving students who've taken AP courses and how they have done on AP assessments. Did I get that right? You want to repeat the question first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the question is, are they waiving the requirement? So, for example, if a student took a AP Bio here, are they waiving like a science requirement at the college? Yeah. So from what I gather, and Ms. Latif can help as well, is that it usually, or the trend is that schools will take the credit, but a lot of times it's for elective credit and not to replace a specific core course that they're requiring. So it's still, to what Mr. Arthur was saying, it still can help financially, and it still can maybe allow a student to take 3 courses a semester instead of 4 or 5, but it may replace it may give them an elective credit. I have also seen and have received some parent feedback recently that a lot of schools are requiring more so 4 and 5s now as well. And in rare circumstances, I have heard also sometimes you need to still pay for the credit. And that is really rare, but I have heard that on occasion. Yeah. Of course, yeah. Yes, and I think overall it's still a huge benefit, but yes, it depends on the school and everyone has different requirements. Yep.
So great question. Actually, one of my daughters got impacted by that. So again, the question is, if I take a number of AP courses and I go to university, are they going to accept that AP Chem credit that I got here, there? So some schools, universities, especially the competitive ones, they have their own internal policy where there are certain courses that are within a department that they want to make sure that you take it there. So it depends on the school. Just like Ms. Pirello indicated, some universities make a decision that we're no longer going to accept a 3 on an AP exam to award credit, right? We're going to go with a 4 or a 5 to then, it depends on the university. All right, let me just do this. Just let me go through the presentation and then we'll address any questions that come up. I just want to make sure I'm respectful of everyone's time. All right.
All right, we are going to touch on junior year. Again, it's a very important year. Students should be attending extra help. Also, junior year is a huge year that students should be really building on their extracurricular activities. So this could be clubs in schools, it could be involvement outside of schools, investing their time. Sometimes students do an internship, but now junior year is a really big year. It's also probably the first year where students can take some sort of a leadership role in these extracurricular opportunities as well. It's also the beginning of probably attending college fairs and visiting some colleges. The testing timeline. So we're going to talk about the SAT and ACT. So typically in the beginning of 11th grade, students are starting to prep for the SAT or ACT. Colleges will accept either the SAT or the ACT. There is no preference there. If a student is taking these exams, they usually are taking 2 of them, and usually it's in the springtime of 11th grade. What is the benefit of taking 2? A lot of schools super score, so you can take your best reading from one session and math from another and combine them for a super score. Okay, so we would say typically students take it usually 2 to 3 times. Some students want to wait and take one in the beginning of senior year, and now with deadlines and colleges and most of our students applying early, that can be a little stressful time-wise, so if you can take 2 in the spring of junior year, that's what we would recommend. Also, AP exams are given at the end of the AP course in May, so those are the exams that Mr. Arthur was just talking about. Since COVID, many colleges are what we call test optional. So colleges are no longer requiring students to submit their SAT or ACT scores. So after COVID, I'd say probably like 95% of schools were test optional. Now we're seeing some schools require some sort of standardized tests again. I just got an email from 2 Ivy League schools, but for the most part, a lot of the colleges still have this optional policy. What does that mean? I would still encourage every student to take the SAT or ACT, but if they are taking the exam and they're not scoring to their best ability, we do have some flexibility in whether or not we want to submit the scores. So usually how we assess that is we look up the average SAT or ACT score of that particular college, and if a student is somewhere at their average or above, then we will recommend the student submit the scores. If they are not, then they will hold the scores and not submit them. And you could submit your scores to some schools and hold them for others. So when you do not submit your scores, colleges are focusing on the other pieces of the application more. So everything else is more enhanced. They're looking at your extracurricular activities more. They're looking at the college essay more and your letters of recommendation. So you want to just make sure you're doing your research, and us as counselors, myself and Mr. Treglia, will help you and look at each school and will help you decide whether or not you should submit. The SAT and ACT are done outside of school. So you will register on your own through the College Board or actstudent.org. We will remind you to do so, but it's done outside of our school. You'll put in your zip code and find the nearest school that offers the SAT or ACT exam. I included this in the presentation. You can look at it. These are the differences between the SAT and ACT. The biggest difference is that the SAT is digital right now, so it's all on the computer. Some students really like that, others do not. And the SAT is scored out of 1,600 and the ACT is scored out of 36. So sometimes students will take the SAT twice and not love their grade, and then they'll try the ACT and it might go up. And there's different charts we can look at to compare the two scores. Finding a college match. So college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. What do we mean by this? Sometimes students and families are really, really caught up in the brand name of a school or what we think is the best college from what we see on TV or what we read. That doesn't mean it's the right school for your child. So I think finding this perfect fit is really important. There is a school out there for everybody, and based on each student's needs, there are a ton of different options, so don't count anything out. It doesn't mean that the best academic school or the highest rated school is the one that's a match for your child. So we will help, but you want to keep your options open and be flexible there. College search criteria. So I'm going to talk about Naviance in a minute. Naviance is a search engine and a platform that we use in the college application process. We really start to use it junior year, where we come up with a list of colleges that a student might be interested in. It also offers this college search. Also, College Board, where you register for your SATs, also offers a college search engine. You can narrow down colleges based on size, location, if you know what major you want to be. Let's say you want to be an engineer. We have programs that can help you find a school based on that specific major and who has the strongest program in that major. Campus life is important to some students. What I think is a really big piece to finding a good college is actually taking a visit and stepping foot on campus, if you can do it. I know there's colleges that are far away, and that's okay, but if you can make it to a school, sometimes just stepping foot, students either feel it or they don't. They can see themselves there for the next 4 years, or they can't. So sometimes it's just a different factor, and you need to see it for yourself. But in 11th grade, that's really when we'll encourage you to start taking some tours and start taking some official college tours where you're signing in and showing this demonstrated interest that Mr. Arthur has been talking about. You want to show the schools that you're actually interested in it and that you're not just throwing them on your list of 20 schools. The Naviance search also can, basically, you don't want to put in too many criteria that you're narrowing it down in, so you want to leave it open a little bit, but you can do a search based on whether you want to be in the Northeast or the South or out West. Here are some touring tips. Again, going and signing in and taking official tours are really important. If you know what major you want to be, you can actually ask if you can sit in on a class there as well. So that's a really important piece. Sometimes just asking a student in the campus center what their experience is like is really important. So not just listening to every little thing the tour guide is saying. While that's important, it is also important to get a pulse of what the life is like on campus as well from some other resources. We provide our students, it's in the folder as well, some questions that students can ask when they're at a college tour or also when they're taking a campus visit. So when students are going to a college fair and they're going to speak with a representative, sometimes they're at a loss of what to say. Here, there's some prompts for students here that they can ask, and also they can use this when they're taking tours as well. We spent some time this year creating this document to help support our students. Naviance. This chart in Naviance up here is probably one of the most important pieces of our college process. So when a student is coming up with a list of schools that they're applying to, we want this list of schools to be to have what we call safety, target, and reach schools. A safety school is a school that we're pretty confident the student can get into. Academically, the student applying is above what they're looking for. A target school is a school that is kind of right on par with what the student's academics are. And a reach school is a school that's a little bit above them academically, but they're going to try and put in an application anyways. So we want your list, and typically I would say a student applies from anywhere between like 6 and 15 schools. Some do more, some do less, but that's probably the average. But within that, we want these safety, target, and reach schools. How do we know if it's a safety, target, or reach school? We have the ability through Naviance to keep the data from our past Tuckahoe High School graduates. So in this case, if you look, this just is an example of Marist College. The green dots on the graph show students who've been accepted to Marist. The X's are students who have been denied, and the blue diamonds are waitlisted or deferred. When you're waitlisted or deferred, you're basically put on hold from a college. And this is measuring two things. It's measuring a student's grade point average and their SAT score. So there's a little red circle in between it, and that red circle will represent your student or your child. So you can see where they're at compared to the data of all other students from Tuckahoe that applied to Marist. If that red circle is in between all of those green dots, we know the student has a really good chance of getting in. If they're below and to the left and surrounded by a bunch of red X's, we know it's going to be a little bit harder to get in. So that's how we'll determine if it's a safety, target, or reach school. Naviance also has the search engine that you can use. It's also how we as counselors will send a student's letter of recommendation, their transcript, and our school profile to the colleges when they apply their senior year. So this program matches up to their college application, so we can electronically send that information. Also, under this What's New, when a student logs into Naviance, there's a whole tab that says What's New, and it will tell you which colleges are coming to Tuckahoe to visit our students. So we've had a ton of colleges, a ton of different admissions representatives come sit in our guidance office and sit with probably 5 to 10 of our students and have a really wonderful conversation with each student. They talk about their college. It's a good opportunity for our students to ask questions. It's showing demonstrated interest to these college reps as well. So it's a wonderful opportunity. Students can register on Naviance. So if they see that Manhattan University is coming and they want to go, they can register, and the students will come down during the day to meet the Manhattan representative. Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that we've noticed that there's a trend of our students over the last 2-3 years who are looking for Southern schools. So we adjusted our practice to meet that trend. So we had schools such as Vanderbilt here, we had schools such as Florida, we had schools Georgia, we have Alabama that's going to be coming in to meet with all of our 10th or 11th?
So no, they come into our 12th grade, yep.
No, University of Alabama, when we did the special assembly.
Oh,
So University of Alabama, we brought them in last year, we're bringing them back this year for a special assembly with all of our juniors. So we've moved in that direction. But this year, we've had a healthy showing of colleges from Ivy League to top tier. We had Bucknell, we had Columbia, we had, like I said, Vanderbilt, Johns Hopkins. You name the schools, we've had them here in our halls meeting with students. We've had some of our students gotten accepted to schools as far as Chicago, like Northwestern, which has, probably the #1 journalism school in the country, right? And we have a student there, mom sitting here, who got accepted. So we have a number of universities that are coming in. Ms. Perello indicated that our sophomores and juniors, we took some of them to Fordham University. So we're trying to meet students exactly where they are by giving them a whole list of offerings.
Applying to college. So our seniors, like I said, just about 80% have applied at this point. There's a few different pieces to the application process. When we meet with our 11th grade families towards the end of the school year, we'll talk about what students can do in 11th grade and over the summer to best prepare them for the application process. Anything that students can do the summer after 11th grade is very helpful. I think students underestimate just how much they have to do when they get back to school in the beginning of their senior year. So everyone's starting new courses and they're doing the school play, or they are involved in sports and there's not a ton of time. So to start the college application college application process over the summer is really important. As part of this process, we send colleges students transcripts. Students will send their official SAT or ACT score. Students submit a college essay, which our teachers work with our students on at the end of junior year and the beginning of senior year. Also, myself and Mr. Treglia will happily read over any college essay. Students are required to ask 2 teachers for letters of recommendation. So this is 2 academic teachers, and that is what's sent to the colleges that students apply to. In addition to the teacher letters of recommendations, as counselors, we write a letter of recommendation to every student as well. We send out what we call an electronic brag sheet to all of our parents, and it's an opportunity for parents to let us know about something that we may not know as counselors or by seeing a student in school. So it is helpful if parents take some time to fill that out. In addition, students are filling out supplements. So every student has to write a college essay, but some colleges have extra questions or extra essays that are called supplements that students will have to fill out as well. There's different types of admission. There is early action, early decision, and regular. So early action, typically those deadlines are November 1st or November 15th, and applying early action to a school is beneficial because you find out sooner your senior year whether or not you've been accepted to that school. There is no academic advantage to getting to applying early action. You can apply to any school. You can apply to 8 schools early action as long as the college has it. The only benefit is that you find out sooner. Early decision is different. Early decision is a binding process. You can only apply to 1 school early decision, and you are committing to that school. You are saying, if I get accepted, I will attend that college. The student has to sign off on documents, the parents has to sign off, and we as counselors have to sign off as well. So you are committing to going to the college if you get an acceptance. It increases your chances of getting into a college when you apply early decision. So there are benefits to applying early decision, but there are some downsides as well. You're committing to a college before you know your financial aid package. So sometimes that sometimes scares parents into wanting to apply early decision. Colleges are still supposed to provide you with just as much financial aid as they would otherwise, but you don't have the opportunity to compare your financial aid award letters. What do I mean by that? If a student applies regular decision, they will get a financial aid from one school, school 1, school 2, and school 3. And you can see what every school is offering you and go back to school 1 and say, hi, school 2 has offered me this, can you offer me this as well? When you're applying early decision, you don't have that opportunity. You will only receive the financial aid package from that one school. So we're happy to talk with you and talk through it with you if you are considering early decision. But it can be a really wonderful tool to help you get into a college you may not otherwise.
So remember I told you that about my middle daughter. I encouraged her. She really wanted Georgetown. I said, go ED. No, I'm going to go regular admissions, right? So one of the things that we've known from doing some research, that some colleges, they fill 60% of their class for students being accepted doing ED. It depends on the school, maybe 50% for another school, but a large number of their classes filled by ED. So it puts a little bit of pressure, but as Ms. Perello indicated, it increases your chance of getting in. When you think about it, so you have 1,000 students, you have 1,000 students that can be accepted to, let's say, Manhattan University, right? If 60% of their class is filled, right, by, let's say, December 1st, decisions are made, then those students who are applying for regular admissions, which would be a much larger number, there are less seats available for students to get accepted. And that's what happened with my daughter also. There were just too many applicants who applied regular admissions, and she got waitlisted. So just something to think about, but to Ms. Perello's point, it can be a wonderful thing, but the financial obligation you have to be prepared for.
And then there's regular decision, and those deadlines usually aren't until January 1st or February 1st, but students find out later in the spring whether or not they've been accepted. And then there's something called rolling admissions, which just means as soon as the student is ready to submit, they can, and then a college will begin to look at it as soon as it's submitted. So every college differs in what types of admission deadlines they have. So some schools have early decision, others don't. Some have early action, others don't, so it differs by school. Our programs, Naviance and also the Common Application, which I'll go over in a second, both have help you to organize and see what schools offer what, different admissions types, and when those specific deadlines are. The Common Application actually connects to Naviance. So we're using these two platforms. We're using Naviance to explore colleges, and we're using the Common Application to actually apply to colleges. The Common Application is where students are actually filling out their application, their college applications. They are making the payment through Common App and submitting through Common App. The Common App is helpful because there's a common section. So students don't need to fill out this common information 12 different times. It helps. They'll fill out their family information once, and it automatically gets sent to all of the schools on their list. As part of this common application, there is your college essay. And if you look on the right side, we have all of the Common Application essay prompts. There's 6 different prompts, but if you read the 7th prompt, it says an essay on any topic of your choice. So really, a student's options are endless for what they want to write about. The college essay has to be 650 words or less. We have seen that a more descriptive essay, kind of a different type of essay, is usually a little bit better than your typical of what we think of your college essay. So we want to steer away from scoring the winning goal, or maybe talking about something like COVID that everybody went through, and we want to focus on something a little bit different and a little bit more relatable to that student. So a student's job through their college essay is to show who they are. And we've seen this in many different ways, but one of my favorite ones was when a student wrote about a plate of food, and each piece of this meal related back to a different piece of their personality. So it really doesn't matter what the topic is, as long as they're relating it back to themselves, and as long as it's creative and attention-grabbing. There is an activities section on the Common App, and I can't stress enough how important activities are. There's 10 different slots here for extracurricular activities. So each student will type in a different activity. You're going to talk about your position in that activity, what grades you participated in that activity, and how many hours a week you spend doing that activity. So the way we always encourage students to fill this out is that they're putting what they're most involved in up top to less involved in towards the bottom. But students want to show colleges that they're involved, that maybe they've held a leadership position. So these are all things that you should be encouraging your 10th and 11th grader to do, to continue to be involved and stay committed to specific things. So it looks better that a student was in the student government for 4 years than it does just randomly volunteering at a soup kitchen one Sunday, okay? So this commitment is also important as well when you're talking about activities. financing your child's education. So every year we work with Eastchester to provide our families a financial aid night where somebody comes from a college to explain the financial aid process. We, as a school, offer different scholarships, local scholarships. Ms. Nicoletto's puts it on a scholarship bulletin, and our students are really successful at getting an extra $500 or $1,000 here and there, which can really help and add up. In addition, all of the families, or most of our families, fill out the FAFSA, which is federal financial aid, and it consists of different loans and grants and work-study options that can be offered to a student and their family. In addition, colleges have merit scholarships. So merit scholarships is money that a college will give to you for doing well academically. So sometimes if you score over 1,200 on your SATs, they might give you some sort of a merit scholarship, or if your GPA is over 3.4, they might give you some sort of a merit scholarship. So these merit scholarships differ by university and college, but it can really help to you financing your child's education as well.
All right, we're getting close to bringing up Ms. Latif from Manhattan University. And Ms. Perello just said something that I have experienced directly as a parent. My daughter's at University of Miami. She had gotten a lot of different merit scholarships from schools such as Delaware University, from Penn State, she got some. And Miami gave very little merit scholarships. So what my daughter did, which Ms. Perello spoke to, she wrote a letter to Miami University showing all the amounts of merit scholarships she received from other schools, and they increased her award by $20,000 just from her doing that, all right? So it matters, right? So they wanted her, and they gave her more money. So just something to think about. You know, this is a book I would recommend parents to get. We, as a leadership team, guidance, including Dr. Keel, we all got this book last year, and we did a book study. And through this book and other things that we've read, we've sort of shifted some of the things that we've done in our school. Here's something I want you to think about. One of the reasons why I highlighted the data for you is because when colleges look at our high school profile, they have information such as our SAT scores, ACT scores, the average. They look at all the courses that we offer. Colleges are savvy and know what they're looking for. We want to make sure that when we have students in our top 10, top 15, top 20, we want to make sure those students, they're scoring, not at 1,100 in the SAT. How can you can have all these AP courses and not do well on the SAT? There's a problem there. So one of the things that I can share with you is that our students have done relatively well on the SATs. And that's from a whole host of reasons. Number one of the things that, like I said, we started to do is look at our curriculum. And this is why we really increase our level of rigor to meet the AP standards. So this book was very informative to us in our practices, and I would encourage parents to get this book. It was very informative, and it really helped us make some significant changes. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite Ms. Anisha Latif from Manhattan University. She's going to share a little bit about her background and share with you some of the work that she does and things that you and your scholar need to do if your child is a sophomore or if your child's a junior. So she's partnered with us, and she's done some excellent work, and we're really looking forward to partnering more with other universities. Ms. Latif.
Thank you so much. Hello, and hello again to some of those who were already here last week. My name is Anisha Latif. I am one of the assistant directors of admissions at Manhattan University. I've been in admissions for many years. I'm a lot older than I look. Just to tell you a little bit about my background, I went to high school right around the corner. I went to Ursuline way back in the day. And for college, I went to Sarah Lawrence, right in Bronxville. I didn't know I'd end up in admissions. I studied Middle East studies as a concentration when I was in college. For graduate school, I went to Columbia in the city. And I always knew I wanted to work in a college, but I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. Of course, this didn't really, this wasn't my original plan when I was studying in college. So I just want to throw that out there for those of you that are still in high schools trying to figure out what your path will end up becoming. You'll never know until you actually start exploring in the world. So I say this because I've been at admissions for over 7 years now. I was in graduate admissions for 5 years. I was at Columbia as well as Manhattanville, and I've been at Manhattan University for around 3 years now. So it's a couple of recruitment cycles. So right now we're in the middle of our recruitment season, which basically means that a lot of us counselors are on the road recruiting, going to visit different high schools. We've attended college fairs, visited high schools, speaking with current seniors, and many schools like Manhattan, we are also going to start reading applications. A lot of schools have earlier deadlines, so they've probably already started that process of sending out decisions. But my team, we are about to start reading applications, and we will start sending them out on a rolling basis. So I say this just so you get an idea of where we are in the cycle. So this presentation was fantastic, and for those of you that are about to, embark on the admissions journey, hold on to this. This is great. Your team is fantastic. So I really want to say thank you to Mr. Arthur and Ms. Perillo because they're fantastic. Also, Phil is great. So you guys have an amazing support system over here. I just want to say that. I know there's a couple of questions that I was tasked with answering, but I'd like to go back and kind of do a brief overview. I know some of the questions came up before. I'd like to go back and address those a little bit. So I would like to talk about the application, at least from my point of view, because I'm actually in the field doing this right now, reading applications. I can tell you a little bit about what we're looking for and what that reading process is like. So when it comes to the Common Application, I don't need to, repeat everything that's already been said. Yes, you will be applying through the Common App, sending that out to up to 20 schools through the Common Application, and hopefully, if Manhattan's one of them, I will be the one reading your application. But these are a lot of the components that consist of an application. And the thing is, it's going to vary depending on the school you're looking for. So I can really speak to you based on what we're looking for at Manhattan, but it's going to vary across the board when it comes to test scores. I know when it comes to APs, when it comes to these supplemental requirements, everything is going to vary. So I will say that when you're making your list of schools, you also need to see what the requirements are for their application, what they're looking for the particular major you're applying to. And of course, we could get into like tuition. I can answer questions about that, but also different deadlines, testing requirements, those sort of things. And of course, it really depends on what you're specifically interested in. So when it comes to the transcript, I think that, looking back on that sheet, seeing that breakdown of what the transcript looks like, get an idea, familiarize yourself with that, because Ms. Perillo was right. For the most part, schools aren't going to see a lot of senior year grades. And I will say, speaking with current seniors right now, I tend to find that it's very interesting how suddenly the summer before senior year, that's when it suddenly kicks in. Seniors are like, oh my goodness, I have to apply to college. And all of a sudden there's this pressure. I need to join every club, I need to do this. You get so excited. But the thing is that if you apply today to a college, we're not going to see your grades from senior year. We're only going to see 9th, 10th, and 11th. That being said, we're going to see the level of academic rigor. We're going to see what kind of APs you've taken, if any. So a lot of the times, whatever you're doing in senior year, we're not going to see it. What we will see is we're going to see the courses that you've signed up for. So we will see if you are, in a very light course load. We can see if you've decided that you don't want to take a fourth year of math or science, which you might not be required to do, but we will see that you might have a very light course load. And while that might be nice for senior year, come in late or leave early, that is an opportunity for us to see that you're still working hard and trying to keep at it. Some schools might ask for mid-year grades. They might ask for a mid-year report, and that could work in your benefit. Depending on the institution, they might even provide a transcript that shows those mid-year grades, and it might show a boost in your GPA, which is great. Oftentimes, depending on how that transcript is laid out, we might suggest applying a little bit later, simply because if you anticipate that your GPA is going to go up at least a couple of points, that could equal a couple of $1,000s in merit scholarship. I'll touch upon merit scholarship in a little bit. I want to go down to SAT, ACT, AP scores, because I know that question was up before, and I really wanted to make a point to talk about that. When it comes to standardized tests, at Manhattan, we are test optional. There are many schools that are test optional, and I know that this was one of the changes that occurred after the pandemic, this move to test optional. A lot of schools are going back, so I will say that this will be a component that you need to decide for yourself if that is something that you would like to, if you'd like to apply it as test optional or not. That's really up to you. It also depends on the school. I will say, as an admissions professional, I would recommend that all of you take the SAT. It's good to at least have it so you know where you stand. Whether you choose to submit it is up to you. Some schools will require it. For us, I will tell you, I would recommend don't submit it unless you think you did very well, simply because we will be taking that into consideration for merit scholarships. I want to talk about merit scholarships in a bit, so we'll table that momentarily. AP scores. Now, we were talking a lot about that, about academic rigor, whether you should take AP scores, honors courses, that sort of thing. We like to see that. Schools like to see that a student is challenging themselves. I will say this time and time again. I would rather see you struggle in an AP course than smooth sailing through all regular courses. When we are looking at a transcript, there's a big difference in a student who's taking all regular courses, but they're doing very well, versus a student who's taking an AP course and they're struggling. I'd rather see you struggle. At the same time, we're not expecting you to take every single AP under the sun. That's not necessary. I say this as, at Manhattan, we're very well known for engineering, so I can speak a little bit about our engineering program. We like to see that students who are interested in engineering, they're taking at least 4 years of math, 4 years of science. We want to see that they're taking physics, chemistry, pre-calc, and/or calculus. We would rather see that you are struggling in an honors or AP level course rather than doing well in all of those subject areas. That's okay. At the same time, if you're interested in engineering, we would prefer that you focus on taking APs or challenging courses within that subject area. It's not necessary for you to take, let's say, like AP Lit or AP Environmental if you're trying to go and become a mechanical engineer. At the same time, when it comes to getting AP credit, depending on the major, you may not receive credit for the course that you're looking for. For instance, for our School of Engineering, they're looking for 5s in the APs. And it's not going to be 5s for every single AP. They're only going to take certain APs that fit into the School of Engineering. If you're going and becoming an engineer, you don't necessarily need AP Lit. That might not satisfy a requirement. On the flip side, for our School of Arts and Sciences, you might not necessarily need to take a whole lot of science or math courses to satisfy some of the courses that they might accept into one of those programs. So it really varies depending on the particular major you're going into. So just be mindful, be cognizant that you want to make sure that your program plan aligns with what you're studying in high school. So if you're a student who doesn't exactly know what you'd like to major in, that's totally fine, because for most schools, you won't actually declare your major until your second year. That's the case at Manhattan. You won't be declaring your major until you're a sophomore. You're going to start off that first year taking pretty much like an intro into to everything, and more general education type courses, but you won't actually declare until your second year. So that's helpful if you are a student who's still trying to figure out between a variety of options, or maybe you just know, I would like to do business, but I don't know what kind of business. That's totally fine. There are plenty of students who are freshmen, sophomores, even juniors, and they're still trying to navigate what exactly they want to do. That's totally fine. I want you to understand it's not a big deal for you to be in the 10th grade, 11th grade, and not know what you'd like to do. That's totally fine. Having worked in graduate admissions for many years, I can tell you there are many adults that go back to graduate school and they do complete career changers. So it's totally fine. But if you have an idea of what you'd like to do, let's make sure that your courses at least align with that. At the same time, I really want to encourage you to take advantage of all of the challenging courses that are offered here at Tuckahoe. It's going to be very helpful for you going forward. College essay. I know, I get a lot of questions about the college essay. So, college essay is one component of your application. It is one of many components. The list that you see here of these common essay prompts, I think this is really helpful to at least get an idea of what these options, what the options for the essay topics entail. It's not necessary for you to think about that right now, but it's nice to at least start that conversation, because I know, having done many workshops, I've done workshops here with Tuckahoe students, that just trying to draft that essay topic, like what do I talk about? Oh my God, it's such an overwhelming concept. I know a lot of the time students get so wrapped up in that, first sentence that it's so hard to even prepare a draft, because they're like, I need to write that hook. I'm like, don't worry, we can draft different ideas. I know Ms. Perillo talked about some topics to avoid, and I would say COVID is definitely a topic that many of my colleagues in admissions, we do recommend students avoid, just because I can't tell you how many times I've read an essay that had a sentence that went like, so in 2020, there was this global pandemic known as COVID. I'm like, oh my goodness, you don't say. And I can't tell you how many essays I've read that have included a sentence like that. I'm like, let's go beyond that, because that's not telling us a lot about you, especially considering how long it's been since COVID affected all of us. But this is our one opportunity to get to know you as an applicant, apart from the numbers, apart from, of course, the letters of recommendation. But this is our one chance to see how you would fit in our college community. And also, I will say that this is really valuable because it's an opportunity to show us that you can write well. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen an essay where it looks like a first draft or like a text message, and I just wonder, I'm like, do they realize that people are actually reading this, So please don't write this on your phone like you're texting your friends. Let's use proper grammar and punctuation, that sort of thing. Because this is a reflection of who you are as a student, who you are as an applicant, and a lot of the times this can really make a difference. This is providing a lot of context that might reflect in your transcript, so that's very helpful. For instance, if a student has struggled in a certain semester, certain year, this definitely provides context for us in admissions when we're reading to get an idea of understanding those grades. When we're talking about grades, I would say that GPA requirements will vary. Seeing the graph in Naviance, that's very helpful, but I will say that those graphs, let me see if I can pull that up. This is great, a great visual. The thing is, there's no real formula for how you can decide like who's getting in and who's not, because there's so many factors that are going into it. A lot of this is based on purely the numbers, but it's not taking into account the other components of the application, because we are reading every single essay, every single letter of recommendation, and those are also getting added in the review process. So while this is really helpful for you to get an idea of grades-wise, I want you to understand that the essay and the letters of recommendation, other supplements, interactions that you have with counselors, those can also contribute to whether or not you'll get admitted into your college of choice. When it comes to letters of recommendation, I mean, it really depends on the school as to the number of letters that you need. We require one. You can submit up to 3, but I often get asked, does it matter who's writing the letters? I would say the most effective letters are going to come from individuals that know you well and can write a more personal letter. I know in your guidance office, they tend to ask for at least a little a draft about your experiences, what activities you're involved in, and of course that brag sheet, that's always great because that provides that personal anecdote that counselors love to read, because there's all too many schools where your the guidance team at another high school won't be able to provide the level of personalized support that you get here. There's a lot of my reading territory, so I read applications from Westchester all the way up to Albany, Western Central New York, as well as Connecticut. So I have a handful of applications that I have to read. There are, high schools of various sizes, but a lot of the counselors at larger schools are having larger caseloads of students that they're working with. And a lot of the times at these larger schools, they're not able to provide that really personal letter that you're able to get here. Some counselors say, I have a massive course load, I can't provide a letter. So that puts a lot of students at a disservice because they're not able to, get that really detailed and supportive letter that you guys are able to get here. I will say that when you're looking for what teacher should I ask to write my letter of recommendation, ask the teacher that knows you very well. You don't want to ask someone who's just has a high rank, or just maybe someone you've interned with who's like a CEO of a company, but they barely know you. You want to ask somebody who can actually write more than a couple of sentences about you, because those letters are very helpful. They put into context the kind of student you are, and it's really helpful for us in admissions when we are taking into account so many other factors in your application. When it comes to supplements, not all schools will require a supplemental essay or a resume auditions. You will need to look and see the requirements for each school that you're looking at. And of course, those requirements will vary depending on the major. If you are interested in music or the performing arts, oftentimes that will include a requirement for an audition. If you're interested in any of the arts or architecture, perhaps, they might require a portfolio. Certain schools will require interviews. At Manhattan, we don't require interviews, but you can request one, and that is a great way for you to include supplemental information into your application. And then, of course, supplemental essays. Not all schools will require it, but I will say that supplemental application requirements, this is almost a way to weed out applicants, because adding additional essays like this is additional work for the students. And a lot of the times, you'll find that students might not even apply to a school because they require all these additional essays. So you can imagine, it might seem a little bit more complicated for you, but simply adding an additional essay could make or break, because many students won't even apply to that school because they'll require all these additional materials. So it doesn't hurt. I would say that when you are preparing your essays and your supplemental materials, please keep in mind that you proofread and make sure that when you're applying to, let's say, Columbia, that you don't put Penn State or something in the essay. So many times I've read an essay where the student is like, and that's why I'm trying to apply to UPenn. I'm like, well, we are Manhattan. So please just make sure that you are proofreading. When it comes to these deadlines, of course, we are in the middle of, this very busy time period. So many of the seniors have already submitted a lot of their applications. At Manhattan, we are rolling admissions. We do have early decision and early action. I tend to recommend, at least to students that I'm working with, don't apply early decision to us at Manhattan because it's binding, unless you have no concerns about finances. Cost of tuition, it's, unless you have lots of cash in your pocket, like, $90,000, like, Mr. Arthur was talking about before, it's a lot for a lot of families. And when we're talking about the cost of college, we also want to talk about what those scholarships and financial aid packages look like. So at this point, I would like to talk a little bit about that. When we talk about financial aid, I think there's this assumption that like financial aid refers to everything related to scholarships and whatnot, but we're talking about two different things. Financial aid packages refer to the package that you get when you submit the FAFSA. So that would be federal aid. When it comes to any other kind of merit aid, typically you're not applying to that. Typically schools will provide you with a merit scholarship with your acceptance, and that's oftentimes going to be sent out prior to you even receiving the financial aid package. So the way that the timeline typically works out, you typically will get your financial aid package a couple of months after your decision, depending on when you submit your application. For instance, if you're submitting your application, fairly early, you might receive your decision and merit scholarship well before receiving your financial aid package. So if you decide to apply to a school early decision, you are agreeing to paying, to attending a school and paying that price without knowing exactly what that final cost will look like. Keep in mind, I guess, you guys won't be applying until like next year or the next 2 years. As you start receiving your application decisions, you may receive your merit scholarships, but just keep in mind that that isn't the final price, that you will get a better idea once you receive that financial aid package a few months after that decision. I would like to go back and see the other questions I was supposed to address. Okay. Are there any questions right now? Like, do you guys have any pressing questions? I know I've like kind of gone through a lot of material. I want to make sure that at least like we're answering questions that are specific to you and your interests. Yeah. Yes. So the question was, some schools won't consider you for scholarships if you don't submit your scores. We're talking about SATs? Okay. So I would like to emphasize that one line where you said some schools, because it varies. Right now, especially, this is one of the changes over the past few years in admissions, that move to test optional and then now coming back to requiring tests, it varies. So there isn't one specific answer that we can go by because it really varies depending on the school that you are looking at. I would recommend every student that applies to Manhattan, when I'm talking to them and I'm giving them advice or whatnot, I'm telling them, please also contact the counselor or the admissions office for every other school you're applying to, because those specific requirements will vary depending on the institution. So I can answer that question based on what we do at Manhattan. We are test optional, so we don't require standardized tests. If you choose to submit them, they will be included in your application review, but it's not a requirement. And I always like to emphasize that being test optional means if you choose not to submit them, it's not a red flag. We're not saying, oh my goodness, the scores must be terrible because they didn't submit them. No, you have the ball in your court. You can decide if you want to submit them or not. Students will be evaluated for merit scholarships that are based on academic performance. So that means that we will be basing your scholarship on your transcript. If you choose to submit your standardized test, that will be included in the evaluation for your scholarship, which is why you should decide whether or not it works in your interest to submit them or not. Some students did very well academically, but they're not a good test taker. So that test optional policy really works in their favor, because if they didn't test well, please don't submit that. Just let us look at your grades and that'll be fine. Because in that particular scenario, a weak test score can actually hurt the student. Some schools are test optional, but they are test blind, where they'll look at the score if it's really good, but if it's not, they might not consider it. We are test optional, but we're not test blind. So we will look at a score if you submit it, which means there are times when a student will submit a score that we wish that they didn't submit because that's actually hurting their application. On the other hand, a student that might, their GPA might be okay, or they might not be very strong, but their test was very good, please submit that. That's going to help. I hope that answered. Okay. There was another question. Yes. Yes, for athletics, that actually doesn't go through our office. That's really something that goes through athletics, because that recruitment process starts in junior year. So they'll start having those conversations with coaches. Usually around that time, we'll do an evaluation. We'll get an idea of if we can proceed with the student based on the grades that we're seeing, but ultimately that conversation is happening well before senior year. So if you do have a student that's interested in athletics, please start that conversation early.
So it does. I told you my daughter was waitlisted for Georgetown. Someone in her class who had a lower GPA, had a lower SAT score, got accepted. She had a partial scholarship for lacrosse. So athletics, and you read that book, Who Gets In and Why, it breaks it down and explains to you how athletics definitely enhances a student's opportunity to get accepted to a university. So it's after 8 o'clock. We'll take about 2 more questions. I think Ms. Lateef will share her information. We'll share this PowerPoint presentation so you have it. Additional questions? We want to thank you all for coming out. We want to thank Ms. Lateef for making herself available 2 weeks straight. It is not easy to get an admissions college rep to come in on an evening, especially with what's going on now with the college application process review. I want to thank Ms. Perello. It's a lot of work that went into this presentation, so I just want to thank her. And again, additional questions, feel free to send us an email. We're here to serve. Thank you, and get home safely. Thank you, Gary.